got Tawny's up here. There we go. Okay. Anyway, I will admit to being a little bit nervous or anxious for, in the preparation to come here, and it wasn't because of COVID. I dealt with that a couple weeks ago. It wasn't because of getting up in front of people and speaking. It was, I didn't know what I was going to wear. I was literally dusting off my collared shirts out of the closet last week because it's been so long since I've had to use things like this. So I did resist the urge to go out and buy some new stuff, and it wasn't not because I don't care about being hip or on trend or anything. It's doing my part to not contribute to unnecessary textile waste, as you will see, is not an insignificant issue. So this was actually a topic that I was invited to speak on a couple of years ago at this event, and for obvious reasons that didn't happen, but based on conversations that I heard this morning and some stuff yesterday, I think it's certainly still a very relevant topic. And although the data that I'll be talking about today isn't hot off the presses, I think you'll see it gives some context to maybe the potential that we have here on textiles waste. So yeah, we at AET do a lot of things, but when it comes to our waste team, waste audits of various types are what we spend most of our time doing. So we've got 12 or 15 staff that are out and about all over the place doing this kind of work all the time. So I'm going to be talking today about a bunch of municipal residential waste audits that we did back over the course of 2019, 2020. This was, I guess, primarily part of, or I guess tagged onto a lot of the audit work that we do through the Stewardship Ontario CIF terms of reference audits every year, for obvious reasons, primarily focused on blue box materials. So this particular annual cycle between summer 2019, summer 2020, we had 10 municipalities that we were doing audits in, combination of large urban, small urban, rural, regional. We had a depot municipality or two that are not serviced by curbside programs. We had a couple multi-res municipalities in the mix as well. These were seasonal audits that we did starting in summer 2019, fall 2019, winter 2020, and then we had COVID hit in the spring of 2020. So that kind of threw a wrench into that, seasonal cycle of audits where we had some audits we were not able to do. We did a few. We had a couple delayed into the summer of 2020. So we had, the full slate of municipalities in the mix for those first 3 seasons, and then a kind of a mixed bag for that last season. But generally, the audit methodology was, collection of curbside materials from 100 households per municipality per season over a 2-week waste generation cycle. The depot municipalities, we were intercepting materials that were brought in by residents to the depots. These are residents that don't have access to a curbside program. And then for the ones that had multi-res, they were a certain number of buildings in each municipality that we collected a week's worth of waste from each one of those buildings. So again, as I mentioned, the primary focus of these audits by default is looking at blue box materials, printed paper and packaging. So, very detailed sorting, separating, classifications, 50, 60 categories of different paper and packaging materials. Generally, everything else is just kind of lumped together as other waste. Naturally, there's stuff in there that may be of interest to municipalities or others, and we will often, while we're there, doing these audits, have requests or talk to municipalities about other things they might want to have a look at while we're looking at this other stuff. And the obvious ones there that come up often are organic materials, leaf and yard waste, food waste. Sometimes we get into sanitary pet waste, more detailed breakdown of hazardous materials and things like that. Sometimes we will have a catch-all kind of textiles category that gets added on as well. But this particular year, things went a little bit further on the textiles front, where the Ontario Textiles Diversion Collaborative reached out to us. So they had conducted and facilitated a workshop to develop categories for the textiles waste audit. So kind of a more standardized or a more detailed look at textiles. And it was kind of came out of a lack of data or information on that front. So although there may have been waste audit information or data out there that had textiles included, there wasn't really a consistent way to account for what went into that textiles category. So is footwear in or out? Are we backpacks? Are we looking at just the condition of textiles and whether it's in good enough condition to reuse and so on. So even the data that was there, that they couldn't really compare. There was not a really good information on how much it was. So out of that working group, which includes some municipal representation as well, they came up with these suggested categories: clothing, household, textiles, footwear, accessories, soft toys, and other. And that made its way and eventually got published via NACTR into this textiles audit guide. So as auditors, it's something we can refer to that has a standardized list of categories and definitions and examples of the different materials that we would classify under each type of textile. So I could spend probably an hour getting into the nitty-gritty details, and apologies, this is quite small, but I think we're best served by just taking the high-level view here of what we found. So over those 4 seasonal audits, I'll start with the summer 2019. Our teams literally collected and sorted 11.7 metric tons of residential waste. So we're talking about ripping the bags open, sorting and separating piece by piece, material by material, and weighing all this stuff like to the 100th of a kilo. So in addition to all those other detailed, blue box categories that we would sort things into, we had these more detailed textiles categories. So out of that 11.7 tons in the summer, 500 kilos of textiles waste, which represented, this is by weight, just over 4% by weight of the residential garbage that we collected and sorted that season, were various types of textiles waste. So that's not insignificant. And over the 4 seasons, I won't go through each one, but just kind of, if I was to just look at it as an aggregate sample over that, those 3 or 4 seasonal audits that we did, we collected and sorted 45,000 kilos of garbage. Of that, just over 2,000 kilos was textiles waste of one type or another. And the rough breakdown there, 45% clothing, followed by household textiles, footwear, and so on. So 4.4% by weight. And I believe I'm safe in saying that that's a pretty significant sample size. You do see certainly variability if you're looking at smaller scale week by week or groups of 10 households where you have that smattering of individual pieces of textiles that are thrown in there and things like that. And then you have the odd house that does the closet clean out or something like that where you get a massive bag. So you can definitely see all kinds of weird spikes or anomalies if you're looking at things on a smaller sample scale. But I think what really hit for me was that we're talking 45 metric tons here of residential garbage that we went through. So I think smooth out kind of those things. And overall, we're still looking at 4.4% by weight of textiles. So that was kind of the extent of our field level data gathering on this exercise. And certainly the next question would be then, okay, what of these various types of textiles they got, like what kind of condition are they in? Are they all soiled, ripped, torn, like something that, so we actually collected all that stuff and brought it back to our office. And then Sabine Weber from Fashion Takes Action and some student volunteers from Seneca College took it a step further, and they got into basically grading these various textiles that we found by condition, and also got into even separating by fabric type, cottons versus blends versus synthetics and all that stuff. Obviously not something that would have been feasible for us to do in the field, but they were taking it at that next level. So what did they find when they took all this stuff? So out of that, out of the textiles that we recovered or brought back from the garbage, and they graded, they had this lettering system A through F, A through D being what they would classify as reusable to some degree, with A being the highest, like new, literally with tags, maybe still in the package and so on. B, maybe obvious, some slight or light usage, C and D and so on, where you get into maybe a little bit more wear and tear, or worn out soles and shoes and things like that. So this again is just what we found in the garbage. 65% of what was in there, they graded as reusable to some extent. The grade E would be the next level down, where the shoe or the clothing or whatever condition it was in would not be deemed suitable for reuse by anybody. But had potential recycling opportunity of some sort. And then finally, you get down to the F, which would be the end of life management scenario of some sort, where even the condition of whatever it was that was found was just so nasty, you know, moldy stuff, you know, you have pet waste or all kinds of other stuff that might have been all over certain of these things. And again, this is the condition it was found in the garbage. It was only 14% of all those textiles we found were classified at that bottom end, where maybe there's not really anything of value that can be done. And the other thing to keep in mind is maybe some of that F grade stuff became F grade by way of being placed in the garbage and contaminated through that process. It may have been something to do with it if it didn't end up in the garbage in the first place. So from that, the fashion takes out, and Sabine and her team, this really contributed or fed into this larger study they were looking at, which was funded by, in part by Environment Canada on the feasibility study of textiles recycling in Canada, the potential there. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me. So just again, very quick, high level, there's textiles in there. It's not insignificant. The stuff that we saw in there, a lot of it was in pretty decent condition. And then I guess naturally now I can turn it over to Tani to talk a little bit more about what does that mean? What can we do, or what are the options here for this kind of stuff? So maybe I won't take questions now. If there happens to be any, I'll come back up later.